I don't know what made me stop that afternoon. Maybe the rain, maybe the way her shop window glowed against it. A small place, quiet and warm, the kind that looks like it remembers everyone who's ever walked in. She was behind the counter, hair tied loosely, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a faint streak of charcoal across her wrist. I didn't even notice the art supplies at first, just the way she looked up at me, like she'd been waiting for a question I hadn't asked yet. "Tea?" she said, as if it were part of the greeting. Her voice was low, careful, the kind that finds its way under your skin before you notice. I nodded. I didn't even drink tea that often, but I wasn't about to correct her. She turned, slow and sure, reaching for a small clay teapot on a back shelf. Every movement was deliberate, unhurried, the soft rustle of fabric, the quiet clink of porcelain. I could hear the rain outside, the hiss of water from the kettle, and the faint hum she made under her breath, like she was trying not to think about something. When she poured, the steam rose between us. I don't know if it was the light, or the way her fingers steadied the cup, but her gaze caught mine through the small cloud, steady, unblinking, almost questioning. I said something about the weather, the safest thing I could think of. She smiled, not amused exactly, more like she knew I was hiding behind the words. "Rain makes people honest," she said. "Eventually." That line hung in the air longer than it should have. She slid the cup toward me, her fingers brushing mine for half a second too long. Not an accident, but not entirely intentional either. The kind of touch that happens when two people pretend it didn't. The tea smelled faintly of mint and something floral I couldn't place. I tried to look anywhere but at her, but she didn't make it easy. Her presence filled the quiet, like she'd rearranged the room just by being in it. I noticed a ring on her finger, thin, silver, not new. She caught me noticing. Her lips curved, but her eyes stayed still. "Old habit," she said softly, before I could ask. I didn't know what she meant, or maybe I did. The rain grew heavier, and she leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. Her blouse caught the light, tracing the line of her shoulder. I felt the warmth of the tea in my hands, but it was her nearness that made it hard to breathe. She asked what I painted. I told her, badly, something about rooftops and empty rooms. She listened like it mattered, like she could see every line before I said it. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. "You should bring one here sometime. The walls could use a story." She said it like an invitation. Or a dare. I looked down at the tea, now cooling, and tried to think of something clever. Nothing came out. She tilted her head slightly, waiting, her gaze soft but unreadable, a woman who'd learned to live inside her own silence. The sound of the front door broke it, a sharp chime, a gust of cold air. She didn't turn. For a heartbeat, she just looked at me, as if deciding whether to say what she almost did. Then she exhaled, slow, almost a whisper. "Maybe next time," she said. The door closed again, and I realized I hadn't even finished the tea. But the warmth she left behind, that stayed. I told myself I went back for more brushes, that the first visit didn't mean anything. But when the bell over her door chimed again, I caught the faint lift of her mouth before she looked down. She knew. Mara was rearranging sketch pads, humming the same quiet tune. The place smelled of cedar and rain-soaked pavement, the same as last time. It felt familiar now, dangerously so. "Back already?" she said, not looking up. "Needed supplies?" I lied, holding up an empty hand before realizing it. She smirked, faint but certain. "Of course you did." I stood there, not sure if I should laugh or leave. Instead, I leaned against the counter, close enough to see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes. She asked about my painting again, and somehow we ended up talking about everything else instead, about her years running the shop, about how she'd wanted to paint once but never did. "Life interrupts," she said simply. "Sometimes permanently." I didn't ask about the ring this time, but she touched it once while speaking, the movement so slight I almost missed it. I told her I lived alone, that my apartment always smelled like turpentine and cheap coffee. She said that sounded like freedom. I said it sounded like silence. That made her look at me, Really look. The air between us thickened with something that didn't belong in daylight. When she reached past me to grab a box of pencils, her sleeve brushed my arm. I felt her breath, warm against my neck, just for a second. Neither of us moved. She drew back too quickly, her composure slipping only in her eyes. Sorry, she murmured. I almost said it was fine, but the word felt too small. The world outside pressed against the window, traffic, people, life. But inside, everything had narrowed to her hand resting briefly on the counter, and the way her pulse fluttered just below the skin. I tried to say something casual, but the silence made honesty louder. You make it hard to leave, I said, barely above a whisper. She froze, not offended, not surprised. Just still. Then she shook her head, smiling in that tired, knowing way that belongs to someone who's already lived the consequences of closeness. You're kind, she said. And too young to be so sure. The words should have pushed me back, but they didn't. Instead, I noticed the faint tremor in her voice, the one she probably hoped I wouldn't hear. When I finally gathered my things, she walked me to the door. For a moment, the space between us was too small for pretending. Her hand rose, almost touched my sleeve, then stopped halfway. Don't let the rain ruin your work, she said softly. I should have left. But I didn't. Not right away. She was standing close enough for her perfume, faint jasmine and paper, to settle around me. I met her eyes, and something in them flickered, regret maybe, or the shadow of wanting. Either of us spoke. Then she reached out, just once, fingertips brushing an invisible speck from my shoulder, the gentlest, most deliberate touch I'd ever felt. See you soon, Eli, she whispered. It wasn't a promise, but it sounded like one. And when the door closed behind me, I realized I was already thinking about how soon could be. It had been a week since I last saw her, though I'd replayed that last touch more times than I wanted to admit. Every time I picked up a brush, I found myself painting hands, hers, mostly. The kind that linger when they should let go. When I finally walked into the shop again, the bell above the door startled her. A stack of papers slipped from her hands, scattering across the counter. You're early, she said, voice softer than her surprise. I didn't say when I'd come. Exactly. Her smile trembled between teasing and something else, something caught off guard. She poured tea again, though I hadn't asked. The motion was automatic now, almost intimate in its routine. I watched the steam curl upward, a pale ribbon between us. Your paintings, she said after a pause. Do you ever show them to anyone? Not really. Why not? Because they'd see too much. Her gaze held mine for a long second, too long. Maybe that's the point, she murmured. She turned away then, reaching for a jar of ink on the shelf behind her. Her blouse shifted slightly, revealing a glimpse of skin where the fabric slipped at her shoulder. I looked away too late. She noticed. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, just charged, the kind that hums against your ribs. I shouldn't. She started, then stopped. Shouldn't what? Nothing. She exhaled, steadying herself, but her hands betrayed her, the faintest tremor, as she set the jar down. Before I could step closer, the bell above the door rang again. A man's voice called her name, familiar, casual. I moved back instinctively. Mara? The man stepped halfway inside, mid-30s, dressed like someone who belonged here more than I did. He gave her a quick smile. Forgot my sketchbook. Ah. Right. Her tone was composed, maybe too composed. She retrieved it, handed it over. Their fingers brushed. He didn't notice me right away. When he finally did, his polite nod felt like a question. Eli, she said quickly. A student. He buys supplies here. I nodded, forcing a smile. He left with a wave, the bell chiming behind him. The silence that followed was louder than before. You didn't have to explain, I said quietly. Yes, I did. Her voice cracked just slightly on the last word. She turned away again, but I stepped forward before she could move farther. Mara. She looked up, and everything in that glance was wrong and right at the same time. I don't want to make this harder, I said. You already have. The space between us vanished, not from touch, but from how close we were to it. Her breath grazed my chin, her eyes flicked down, then back up. I could feel the warmth of her hesitation, the pulse of something neither of us named. Her hand rose, hovered near my face, fingers trembling just shy of contact. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound broke the moment cleanly in half. She pulled back fast, a sharp inhale, eyes unfocused. It's nothing, she said, but her voice betrayed her. I nodded, even though I knew it wasn't. The air between us was heavier now, everything we hadn't said pressing closer, louder, more certain. She turned off the phone, set it aside, and for a long, dangerous heartbeat, we just stood there, two people pretending they hadn't already crossed something invisible. When I finally left, I didn't hear her say my name. But I felt it, behind me, unspoken, hanging in the doorway like a secret neither of us could keep for much longer. The next time I saw her, the shop was already closed. The lights inside glowed low and amber, soft through the rain-streaked glass. I hesitated outside, hand on the door, ready to turn back, until I saw her silhouette move. She unlocked the door before I could knock. You shouldn't be here this late, she said, though she didn't sound convinced herself. I couldn't stop thinking, I said. The truth slipped out too easily. She exhaled, a quiet, weary sound. That's not something you should admit. But she stepped aside. The room felt different at night, smaller, dimmer, the shadows longer. The scent of paint and her perfume mixed in the air, warm, a little dizzying. She was barefoot, hair loose, sleeves rolled to her elbows again. You work late, I said, just to fill the silence. Sometimes. She turned away, tidying brushes that didn't need tidying. It keeps my mind busy. From what? She didn't answer. I stepped closer. She must have felt it, the quiet shift in air, the closeness she didn't move away from. Mara, I said softly. Tell me to leave, and I will. She froze, the brush in her hand stilled midair. You make everything sound so simple. It could be. No, she whispered, setting the brush down. It can't. When she turned, her eyes caught the lamplight, the kind of look that holds both warning and want. I can't keep pretending this is nothing, I said. My voice came out lower than I meant it to, unsteady. Her breath hitched. She looked at me for a long, trembling moment, then laughed softly, not from amusement, but exhaustion. You think I haven't tried to stop this? She took a step toward me, slow, deliberate. You're too young to understand what happens when something feels this alive and this wrong at the same time. Her words were firm, but her hands betrayed her. One lifted, fingers brushing the collar of my jacket, smoothing it as if it mattered. Then she left it there, just for a heartbeat too long. I reached up, caught her wrist gently, held it between us. Then tell me to stop. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The rain outside softened to a whisper. The only sound was her breathing, uneven, shallow, close enough that I could feel it against my skin. She looked at me like she was memorizing something she knew she shouldn't. When I brushed a strand of hair from her face, she didn't move. Her eyes fluttered shut, just once, before opening again. Eli, she said, quiet but breaking on the syllable. If we cross this, we already have. The distance between us vanished, a breath apart, the air electric. Her hand rose to my chest. I felt the tremor in her palm, the pull in her restraint. My heart was pounding loud enough I was sure she could feel it. Don't, she whispered, but her voice didn't sound like no. I leaned closer, not touching yet, but so close that her breath warmed the space between us. Her lips parted. And then, a knock at the door. Sharp. Loud. Real. She stepped back, hand over her mouth, eyes wide, the moment fractured, unrecoverable. Go, she breathed. Now. I hesitated, every part of me still reaching for her. Please, she said, softer, shaking her head. So I did. But as I stepped into the rain, my hands still carried the ghost of her warmth, and I knew there was no undoing it now. For 2 days she didn't answer my messages. I told myself to stop trying, but every half-finished canvas in my apartment pulled me back to her somehow, the color of her eyes, the tilt of her mouth when she tried not to smile. On the 3rd day, I went to the shop. The lights were off. The door was locked. I turned to leave, and heard her voice behind me. Eli. She stood a few steps away, coat unbuttoned, hair damp from the drizzle. She looked different, tired, distant. But her eyes, they still found me. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You said that before. This time, I mean it." I wanted to ask why, but she stepped closer first, lowering her voice. "You shouldn't have come that night. I thought you wanted me to. That's the problem," she said, voice trembling. "I did." The confession landed between us like a dropped glass, quiet but shattering everything. She ran a hand through her hair, exhaling hard. "My ex-husband stopped by that night. He saw you leaving." The world seemed to shrink. "He saw?" "Not much. But enough. He still owns part of this place, Eli. The lease, the inventory, everything. If he thinks I'm—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. "He'd make it impossible for me to stay." The air thickened. Every word she didn't finish said more than the ones she did. "I didn't know," I said quietly. "I didn't tell you." Her voice cracked. For a second, I thought she might cry, but she didn't. She just stood there, trembling slightly, from anger or fear or both. "Mara," I stepped closer. "You could have told me." "I couldn't. I wanted this to stay." She hesitated, searching for a word that didn't exist. "Harmless. Does it look harmless to you now?" Her breath caught. She didn't answer. The distance between us collapsed again, unintentionally, her shoulder brushing my chest as she tried to step past me. I caught the faint scent of her hair, the warmth of her body too close to ignore. "Eli, please," she whispered, eyes closing for just a moment. "You're making this harder. I'm not the only one." Her hands clenched at her sides, then relaxed. She looked up, not angry, not resigned, just exposed. "I don't know how to stop wanting what I shouldn't want." I didn't move. Couldn't. Rain streaked the window beside us, light catching on her skin. She looked fragile and fierce at the same time, someone trying to hold herself together while something inside her unraveled. She stepped back once, twice, then stopped, as if running wouldn't matter. "Then don't," I said. She looked at me for a long, wordless moment. The air trembled between us again, that same invisible pull neither of us could name anymore. Finally, she drew a shaky breath. "Tomorrow," she said. "If you come back tomorrow, we stop pretending." And then she turned away, slow, deliberate, leaving me standing in the rain, heartbeat pounding in my throat, knowing that whatever happened next, nothing about it could stay harmless anymore. She left the shop unlocked that night. No words, no message, just the door slightly open, the light inside dim and golden, like it had been waiting for me. I hesitated on the threshold, listening to the rain dripping from the awning, the faint hum of the street outside. Then I stepped in. Mara stood near the back, surrounded by half-finished sketches and open boxes. Her coat was draped over a chair, her hair loose again. She looked up when I entered, not startled, not smiling either, just certain. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "I didn't think I'd be able to stay away." The silence that followed was heavy but not awkward. It was the kind of silence that knew its own reason. She turned, closing the door behind me. The sound of the latch clicked like a decision. For a moment, we said nothing. Her hands trembled as she picked up a pencil, then set it down again. "You make me feel—" She started, then stopped, her breath uneven. "You make me forget who's supposed to be wiser." I took a step closer. The air between us shifted, growing smaller, thicker, warmer. "Maybe you don't have to be." Her laugh was faint, nervous. "You think this is simple?" "No," I said. "That's why it matters." Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. Her hand rose, brushing her hair back, and I caught the motion, gently, fingers meeting hers, stopping it midway. Eli, she whispered. Her name in my head, her voice in the air, everything else blurred. I let my hand rest against her cheek. She didn't move away. Her skin was cool from the rain, but her breath warmed my wrist. You don't know what this costs, she said softly. I don't care. Yes, you do. Her voice cracked again, low, trembling, the kind of sound you only make when every wall has already fallen. I stepped closer still, close enough to feel her heartbeat through the small space left between us. The scent of tea and paper, the faint salt of rain on her skin, everything around her felt impossibly alive. Her forehead touched mine. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, just a quiet surrender, a wordless confession. I've tried to stop, she whispered. I know. Her fingers found my jacket, gripping it, not to pull me closer, but to hold herself steady. For a heartbeat, we hovered there, the whole world narrowed to breath, pulse, the trembling line between restraint and need. Then she pulled back, just enough for me to see the decision in her eyes. I can't lose this place, she said. I've already lost enough. I'm not asking you to. But being with you means I could. The words hit hard, but she was right, and somehow that truth made her touch even more real. I nodded barely. Then don't promise me anything. Just don't lie. I never did, she said. Her hand lifted again, brushing my face once, slow and trembling, a touch that felt like both an ending and an apology. For a second, she leaned in, close enough that I could taste the breath between us. Then she stopped, eyes closed. If I do this, she whispered, I won't stop. I smiled, but it was a sad one. Then don't. Her lips almost met mine, almost, and then she turned her head, pressing her forehead to my shoulder instead. We stayed like that, wordless, the rain echoing outside. No promises, no vows. Just understanding, clear, heavy, impossible to undo. Morning found the shop quiet again. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and clear, sunlight spilling across the wooden floor in slow-moving patterns. I didn't know if she'd be there. Part of me hoped she wouldn't. It would have made things easier. But when I pushed open the door, the faint ring of the bell sounded like something waiting to be finished. Mara was at the counter, hair tied up, sleeves rolled. She looked calm, but not distant anymore. You're early, she said. I didn't sleep. Neither did I. We both laughed, softly, a tired, small laugh that broke the last bit of tension still hanging in the air. She gestured toward a stool by the counter. Sit. The tea kettle hissed again, the same way it had the first day. But this time, there was no pretense in the ritual, no hiding behind politeness or small talk. She poured for both of us, her hands steady, her eyes steady too. I've been thinking, she said quietly, about what we almost did. So have I. I don't regret it. Her voice barely wavered. But it scared me how much I wanted to. I nodded. You weren't the only one. She smiled faintly. That doesn't make it easier. I don't want easy. The words surprised even me, but they felt true. And something in her expression softened, the part of her that always stayed guarded, finally letting air in. She reached across the counter, fingertips brushing mine. No hesitation this time. Just touch, simple, warm, human. People will talk, she murmured. Let them. Her thumb traced the back of my hand, slow, thoughtful. You don't know what it's like, being seen the wrong way for something that feels right. I don't care how it looks, I said. I care how it feels. That made her pause. Then she came around the counter, standing in front of me. Her hands found mine, her forehead resting against mine like before, but there was no trembling now, no pull between right and wrong. Just two people finally standing still. I can't promise forever, she whispered. I'm not asking for it. Then what are you asking for? This, I said. Right now. She let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. Then she smiled, not with her lips, but with her eyes soft and open. When I leaned forward, she didn't move away. She met me halfway, the smallest kiss possible, gentle, real, the kind that didn't try to prove anything. The taste of tea lingered between us, sweet and warm. Her hand stayed in mine as we stood there, surrounded by quiet, by light, by everything unspoken finally understood. No grand declarations. No need for them. Just two people who'd stopped pretending, finding peace in what they couldn't name, and didn't need to. She looked up at me once more and whispered, almost shyly, "You really were just coming in for tea?" I laughed under my breath. Not anymore. The bell over the door rang softly as a breeze passed through. She didn't look away. Neither did I. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something honest,